Give me that car right now. The HOA Karen screaming in my driveway was about to make a huge mistake. She threatened to call the cops when I refused to hand over my keys, convinced that God had sent her my vehicle. But she had no idea what kind of person she was really threatening. Comment where you're watching from, because what happened when she found out who I actually work for will shock you. It's a peaceful Tuesday morning in my quiet suburban neighborhood outside Washington, D.C. I'm Larry Roberts, 50 years old, federal employee for 25 years. Just moved here 6 months ago after being promoted to federal interior chief. My government SUV was parked in the driveway, civilian plates, no obvious federal markings for operational security. That's when I heard footsteps marching across my driveway. A woman in her late 40s with wild eyes, clutching official-looking papers, pointing at my SUV like it had personally offended her family. "That's my compensation car," she screamed loud enough to wake the neighborhood. I nearly choked on my coffee. This woman was dead serious. "Ma'am, this is my work vehicle," I said calmly, decades of federal training kicking in. "God sent it to replace Mark's vehicle," she continued, voice cracking with emotion. "Federal vehicle killed my husband. That caught my attention. 3 years ago, I'd worked a case involving federal contractor Mark Evans, supposedly died in a hit and run. Case never sat right. Vehicle found abandoned near Mexican border. Minimal blood evidence. Body never recovered. Standing there looking at this unhinged woman, I started connecting dots I didn't want to connect. "Give me that car as divine justice," Teresa Evans declared. Her worn wedding ring caught sunlight as she gestured wildly. 3 years of constant twisting. This wasn't just anger. This was grief mixed with desperation. "Ma'am, I refuse to give you my car," I replied, keeping my voice level while my mind raced. If this was Mark Evans's widow, and she believed her husband was killed by a federal vehicle, my showing up here was either the world's worst coincidence or karma's sick joke. Her face turned alarming red. "You refuse God's will." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. 911. "I need to report a man who refuses to give me my compensation car." I watched in fascination as she proceeded to lie to dispatch, claiming God had sent her a justice vehicle and I was blocking divine will. While Teresa paced my driveway giving increasingly unhinged statements, neighbors emerged like prairie dogs sensing danger. Tom Riley from next door was filming from his window. Guy had more security cameras than a casino. Former federal contractor kept giving my SUV suspicious looks. Mrs. Davis across the street, elderly woman who'd later proved to be retired federal employee, watched with knowing smiles. Maria, 2 houses down, clutched her purse nervously whenever Teresa's name came up. Officer Ryan Parker arrived 20 minutes later, rural jurisdiction cop with military bearing, trying to impress his way into bigger agencies. When Teresa showed him official-looking HOA documents claiming seizure authority over my vehicle, his confusion grew in real time. "Ma'am, citizens cannot commandeer vehicles," he told Teresa patiently. When he asked for registration, I handed over contractor cover documents. Legitimate paperwork provided by my agency for exactly this situation, though it felt dirty lying to fellow law enforcement. Teresa's righteous conviction was something to behold. Standing in my driveway, waving fake papers, invoking God and community authority, genuinely believing she was fighting for justice. "Mark's spirit demands justice," she declared to Officer Parker. "That car represents blood debt payment." I felt sorry for her. Grief makes people believe crazy things. If she truly thought her husband was killed by someone like me who escaped consequences, her anger made twisted sense. What she didn't know was that I had Mark Evans's case file memorized. The next few days brought masterclass in how grief and desperation turn normal people into document-forging conspiracy theorists. Teresa spent hours crafting elaborate fake legal documents, official community letterhead, biblical quotes, enough legal language to confuse first-year law students. The HOA divine compensation order looked like it came from someone who'd binge-watched legal dramas while Googling property seizure laws. Neighborhood reactions were telling. Tom paced his driveway, wiping hands on oil-stained rag, nervous tic that worsened every time he looked at my government plates. His GPS installation background for federal fleets meant he spotted subtle differences most people missed. Mrs. Davis gave me protective smiles when Teresa wasn't looking, guarding secrets that would make everything clear if she could share them. Maria's guilt became visible to everyone, clutching leather purse like it contained state secrets, physically flinching whenever Teresa mentioned spending community money on legal costs. When Parker returned to investigate Teresa's latest complaints, she presented fake HOA documents with confidence of someone who'd found legal loopholes. "These documents seem unusual," Parker said carefully. "HOAs don't typically have vehicle seizure authority." Teresa was ready. "My husband's blood demands justice." She'd created full shrine to dead husband wedding pictures, candles, fake death certificate convincing enough to fool anyone not specifically looking for fraud indicators. Every morning, she talked to Mark's picture like he was giving guidance on her mission. Teresa's moral justification was complete. She'd created narrative where I was low-level government contractor, part of system that killed her husband and covered it up. In her mind, taking my car wasn't stealing, it was reclaiming wrongfully denied compensation. The breaking point came when Teresa announced intention to hold legal seizure ceremony, formally transferring my vehicle to her custody in front of entire community. She'd spent community money. Maria's guilty purse-clutching confirmed this on official-looking documents and hired what she claimed was legal observer. But at 3 a.m., Tom's security cameras caught Teresa's worst moment. Standing in my driveway in pajamas and winter coat, talking to my SUV like it was responsible for every tragedy in her life. Spray paint hissed as she wrote "blood debt" across my driver's side door in dripping red letters. But she was crying while doing it. "This is for you, Mark," she whispered, voice carrying on Tom's audio. "Same car type that took you from me." She punctured both front tires with kitchen knife while reciting prayers, smashed side mirror with hammer. For $1,200 worth of federal property destruction. All caught on camera with audio confession. Tom's discovery happened by accident. Reviewing overnight footage when he stumbled across something that made him nearly drop his coffee. Mark Evans. Federal Witness Protection Program. Death faked. Currently living in Guadalajara, Mexico, under identity Marco Valdez. Tom stared at database information for 5 minutes before implications hit like freight train. The woman next door had been mourning living man while committing federal crimes in his memory. Tom's moral crisis ate him alive. He knew Teresa was planning something bigger. Final justice ceremony with tow truck for legitimate property recovery. Telling her truth about Mark would destroy every belief she'd held onto for 3 years of grief. The viral element started small. Tom's footage of Teresa's midnight vandalism got shared in neighborhood group as weird behavior alert. But something about woman in pajamas methodically destroying property while talking to invisible spirits struck people as tragic and darkly funny. Within 48 hours, Teresa's confession to my SUV had been viewed by thousands with comments like, "Karen thinks she's divinely chosen," and "Suburban grief spiral caught on camera." Teresa was orchestrating what she believed would be most righteous moment of her life. She'd spent last of embezzled community funds, $15,000 that had disappeared from HOA accounts, on hiring tow truck and creating professional legal documentation. She'd created social media accounts for this event, promoted as community property recovery, when citizens fight back, expecting thousands to witness her triumph over federal employee illegally occupying her compensation vehicle. The live stream setup became professional production. Multiple camera angles, backup platforms, promotional materials making her property recovery look like legitimate legal proceeding. The morning of Teresa's divine property recovery arrived with crisp autumn clarity. By 7:30 a.m., my quiet street had transformed into something between block party and public execution. Teresa dressed like attending both funeral and wedding, black dress, pearls, determined expression suggesting she was about to save or destroy the world. Tom paced like caged animal, clutching phone with Mark's database information like nuclear launch codes. Mrs. Davis positioned herself strategically on porch. Officer Parker arrived early, surveying what would be either most satisfying arrest or spectacular mental health crisis. Maria looked like attending her own execution, pale and sweaty with knowledge her financial crimes were about to become public. "Ladies and gentlemen," Teresa announced to growing live stream audience, voice carrying absolute confidence of someone believing God personally directed their actions. "Today we witness what happens when ordinary citizens refuse to be intimidated by federal corruption." Comments flew across her stream faster than anyone could read. 15,000 people tuning in to watch epic justice or epic failure. "By authority of divine compensation order," Teresa declared, approaching my SUV with crowbar and folder of fabricated documents. 18,000 viewers watched in real time as suburban widow prepared to commit multiple federal felonies, while explaining how she was striking blow for justice against government corruption. That's when I made the call that ended Teresa's delusions. "Everyone watching needs to understand," I announced to live stream, voice carrying calm authority of someone dealing with people who'd crossed federal lines. "She's committing federal crimes right now." Chat exploded with confusion as viewers tried to figure out why this supposedly helpless contractor suddenly sounded like law enforcement. I pulled out my federal badge and credentials, holding them up to cameras broadcasting to 22,000 people about to witness plot twist of the decade. "I am Chief Larry Roberts, Federal Interior Department," I continued, watching Teresa's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror as implications crashed over her like tsunami of federal consequences. 25,000 people held their breath while Teresa processed that she'd been planning to steal car from someone who had authority to investigate her husband's disappearance. Her crowbar clattered to asphalt as her worldview collapsed in real time. "Federal chief," she whispered, barely audible over chattering of 28,000 viewers loving every second of her destruction. "Oh my God!" But Tom knew this was his moment to save Teresa from herself or destroy what remained of her sanity. "Teresa," he called out, nervous energy channeling into decisive action. "Your husband Mark isn't dead." 30,000 viewers tried to process what they heard while Teresa stood frozen. "He's alive in Mexico," Tom continued, voice strong with relief of finally purging secret eating him alive. "Living under name Marco Valdez with money he stole before faking his death." The sound Teresa made when both revelations hit simultaneously was unlike anything from human being. Grief and rage and disbelief and betrayal compressed into single wail that carried across neighborhood. "Mark is alive!" she screamed, voice breaking as her mind tried to process impossible mathematics of 3 years mourning based on elaborate lie. "Teresa," I said, making my voice gentle while remaining audible to microphones. "I investigated Mark's case 3 years ago. I knew he faked his death. You were victim of his scam too." 35,000 viewers caught fragments of reactions ranging from "plot twist of century" to "this is better than Netflix" to "Karen got scammed by her own dead husband." Teresa sat down hard on my driveway, staring at nothing while processing she'd been committing federal crimes against very person who could have told her truth about her husband's disappearance. "Mark scammed me too," she finally managed, voice hollow with shock of learning entire grief process was based on lies told by someone she trusted completely. Officer Parker approached with handcuffs, reluctant to arrest someone experiencing complete psychological collapse on live stream before 40,000 viewers. That's when Maria decided to complete Teresa's catastrophic education. "Teresa," Maria announced, no longer clutching guilty purse. "You also embezzled $15,000 from our community fund, while mourning your husband who was spending stolen money in Mexico." 45,000 people witnessed most complete psychological destruction in internet history, woman learning simultaneously her dead husband was alive. She'd committed federal crimes against someone who'd investigated his fake death, and her entire grief process was based on lies. Teresa's arrest was gentlest federal crime takedown in law enforcement history. She offered no resistance, psychologically shattered, barely aware of surroundings. "Mark's alive. Mark's alive," she kept repeating like broken recording. Federal investigation revealed Mark hadn't just faked death to escape messy marriage. He'd been running sophisticated fraud operation involving multiple government contracts, money laundering through fake companies, using supposed death to trigger insurance payouts Teresa never received. Mark's capture was embarrassingly easy once investigators figured out his financial patterns. living in Guadalajara as Marco Valdez, running construction business with startup capital matching exact amounts stolen from federal contracts. When arrested on visa violation, his first concern wasn't Teresa's well-being or remorse. It was whether federal government could seize his Mexican assets. Teresa received 18 months federal prison with restitution and supervised probation, including psychological counseling. Judge acknowledged criminal behavior was driven by grief and manipulation rather than greed, but emphasized being victimized doesn't excuse federal crimes. Mark received 5 years federal prison plus full restitution for government losses and personal theft from Teresa. 18 months later, Teresa was released to a world that had moved on. Her foreclosed house was purchased by Coast Guard officer whose driveway now hosted 2 federal vehicles where Teresa's shrine once stood. The neighborhood had evolved, developing new traditions honoring lesson her breakdown taught about dangers of letting grief overcome rational judgment. Annual barbecue included recognition for federal employees, acknowledging service people like me provide while recognizing we're human beings whose lives don't deserve targeting by people victimized by others. 2 years after Teresa's first demand for my compensation car, I got another call. Chief Roberts, we have another HOA harassment case involving someone claiming divine authority over federal employee's vehicle. Suspect says God told her the car belongs to her deceased husband. I laughed. Are we sure the husband is actually dead this time? Send Tom Riley to verify. He's become our expert on fake death detection. Some people never learn. Before demanding someone give you their car, especially with government plates, verify your divine mission isn't based on lies told by someone still alive spending your money in another country. Thanks for joining another unbelievable The HOA Defender that proves truth really is stranger than fiction. Until next time, keep listening for those echoes of justice in your own life.